The video already had more than 200,000 views when everything changed, but when it was filmed, it was just another cruel moment nobody thought would matter. A 9-year-old boy stood frozen outside the most expensive restaurant in Youngstown, tears running down his face while laughter surrounded him. The camera shook in someone's hand, but the fear on the child's face was clear and sharp. His name was Ren Montel, and he could not hear a single word they were saying. It was a Tuesday evening, the kind where the air felt cold, but the city lights made everything look warmer than it really was. Ren had been skating home, his backpack bouncing against his shoulders, his mind focused on getting back to his apartment before it got too dark. He liked routines. They made the world feel safer. He never saw the boys coming until they were already there. 5 teenagers stepped into his path near the entrance of Restaurant Bellenote. Crystal chandeliers glowed behind tall windows, casting soft golden light onto the sidewalk. The leader of the group was Bryce Kepler, the high school quarterback everyone loved. His father's name carried weight in the city, and Bryce wore that power proudly, like the Letterman jacket stretched across his shoulders. Bryce pulled out his phone and smiled in a way that made Ren's stomach tighten. The recording started before Ren understood what was happening. Ren raised his hands and began to sign, trying to explain that he was deaf, that he did not want trouble, that he just wanted to go home. His fingers moved fast, forming full sentences in the air, but the boys only laughed. Bryce copied his movements, mocking the signs with big, exaggerated gestures. The others laughed louder. They stepped closer, circling Ren and pushing him back until his shoulders hit the cold marble wall of the restaurant. His skateboard slipped from under his feet and clattered across the sidewalk. His backpack fell open, spilling notebooks and a worn comic book onto the ground. Ren felt the vibrations through his shoes as they stomped and moved around him. He could not hear the words, but he could see their faces. He knew cruelty when he saw it. Tears streamed down his cheeks as panic took over his small body. He tried signing again, slower this time, begging them to stop. Bryce grabbed his wrists and held them still, smiling for the camera. Inside the restaurant, Silvano Bellini sat at his usual corner table. The seat was always reserved for him. The owner understood that some men needed clear sightlines and easy exits. Silvano's charcoal suit was perfectly tailored, expensive without being flashy. At 29, he had built power through patience and control, and people felt it the moment he entered a room. A plate of untouched osso buco cooled in front of him as he lifted his wine glass. That was when movement outside the window caught his eye. His attention sharpened instantly. He saw a small figure pressed against the wall and taller ones leaning in close. He recognized that posture, that energy. He had seen it before, years ago, in places he tried not to remember. One of the boys shoved Ren again. The impact made the child slide down the wall and collapse onto the sidewalk. Ren covered his face with both hands, his shoulders shaking as he cried silently. The teenagers stepped back, admiring their work. Bryce leaned closer, zooming the camera in, narrating proudly as if he had just won a game. Silvano set his wine glass down harder than he meant to. The sharp sound turned a few heads inside the restaurant, but no one said anything. They never did. People like to believe someone else will intervene. The security camera above the entrance recorded everything without judgment. A well-dressed couple walked out of the restaurant and stepped around Ren like he was part of the pavement. Another group walked in and smiled at Bryce, recognizing him instantly. No one stopped. No one asked if the child was okay. Something inside Silvano shifted. It was old and dangerous and familiar. He stood up slowly, letting his napkin fall to the table. The room seemed to notice him all at once. Conversations lowered. The hostess straightened. Power did not need to announce itself. Silvano walked toward the door and pushed it open, stepping into the cool night air. Streetlights cast long shadows along Federal Street. The teenagers were too busy laughing to notice him at first. Bryce was reviewing his video when a shadow fell across the group. He looked up and froze. Silvano's gaze was calm and empty at the same time. Not angry, worse. Bryce's smile faded, replaced by uncertainty he had never felt before. "Gentlemen, Silvano said quietly. The single word carried enough weight to make the boys step back without thinking. Ren stayed curled against the wall, unaware that anything had changed. His skateboard lay a few feet away, one wheel still spinning slowly. Bryce swallowed and tried to sound relaxed. He slipped his phone into his pocket. His voice cracked despite his effort. Silvano did not respond. He knelt down beside Ren, moving smoothly, like someone who knew how to place his body without threat. He waited. Ren slowly lowered his hands. His face was red and wet, his eyes wide when he saw a stranger in an expensive suit sitting beside him on the dirty sidewalk. There was no pity on Silvano's face, only attention. Silvano raised his hands and began to sign. "Are you hurt?" Ren's breath caught, his eyes widened in shock. Someone here understood him. He nodded and signed back, explaining that his body was okay, but everything else hurt. His hands trembled as he moved them. Silvano nodded once and stood up. He turned to Bryce. "What's your name?" he asked, his voice calm, almost polite. Bryce hesitated. His instincts screamed that this was a mistake, but it was too late. "Bryce Kepler," he said. Silvano smiled slightly. There was no warmth in it. "I'll remember that." The other boys were already backing away. One of them dropped his phone, but no one went back for it. They ran, their footsteps echoing down the street as panic replaced arrogance. Silvano helped Ren to his feet. His grip was firm but gentle, grounding. He picked up the skateboard and gathered Ren's scattered belongings with care. Ren's breathing slowly steadied as the fear began to loosen its hold. Silvano walked him to a black car parked nearby and opened the door. They drove through streets that changed quickly, from polished stone to peeling paint. Ren gave directions using signs at red lights. When they reached his building, Silvano waited until Ren was safely inside before driving away. But Silvano Bellini did not forget names. And somewhere across the city, a mother was about to see the video of her son crying, and everything was about to begin. Alina Montel was exhausted when she finally sat down on the edge of her couch. Her feet ached from 10 hours on greasy diner floors, and her hands smelled faintly of coffee no matter how much she scrubbed them. The small apartment was quiet, except for the old radiator knocking like it always did. Her 4-year-old daughter lay on the carpet coloring, humming softly to herself. Alina reached for her phone, expecting a message about another shift or a reminder she had forgotten to pay something again. Instead, her screen lit up with a notification that made her stomach drop. Someone had tagged her in a video. The preview image loaded slowly, but she already knew before it fully appeared. She pressed play. Her breath left her body in one sharp gasp. Ren stood on the screen, her sweet boy, pressed against a wall, surrounded by teenagers. Even without sound, she could see everything. His hands moved in fast, desperate signs. His face crumpled as tears fell. A boy in a jacket grabbed his wrists and laughed. Alina covered her mouth, but the sound still escaped her. A broken noise, half sob, half scream. Her daughter looked up, confused, fear flickering across her small face. "Mama?" Alina couldn't answer. She watched until the video ended, then watched it again, as if her eyes might change what had already happened. The comments loaded beneath it. Some were angry, some were cruel. Too many were jokes. Her phone vibrated again. Unknown number. "Your freak son made quite a show tonight. Better keep him inside where he belongs." Another message followed seconds later. Worse than the first. Alina's hands shook as she blocked the numbers, knowing it wouldn't stop anything. Once the world decided to look at you, it never really stopped. She jumped to her feet and rushed to Ren's room. His bed was still made. His jacket hung on the chair. He wasn't home. Panic wrapped around her chest, tight and suffocating. She called his phone, even though she knew he couldn't hear it. Straight to voicemail. His calm recorded message explained that he was deaf and asked people to text instead. She sent messages over and over, her fingers moving faster than her thoughts. "Where are you? Please answer. I am coming to get you." She grabbed her coat, her keys, and told her daughter to stay with the neighbor. Her voice sounded steady, but her heart felt like it might tear itself apart. Outside, the streetlights flickered, and the night felt colder than it should have. Alina walked fast, then faster. She followed the route Ren usually took home, past the closed hardware store, past the corner where teenagers loitered. Every shadow felt like danger. Every passing car made her flinch. Federal Street came into view, brighter and cleaner, like a different city entirely. That was when she saw him. Ren sat on the back steps of their building, his skateboard across his lap, staring at nothing. His shoulders were slumped in a way she had never seen before. He looked smaller somehow. She dropped to her knees in front of him and pulled him into her arms. Ren broke. His body shook as silent sobs tore through him. He clung to her jacket like it was the only solid thing left in the world. Alina held him tight, rocking back and forth, whispering apologies he couldn't hear but could feel in the way her chest trembled. "I'm here. I'm here. I've got you." They stayed like that for a long time. Later that night, after Ren finally fell asleep, Alina sat at the small kitchen table with her phone glowing in front of her. The video had spread everywhere. Parent groups, local pages, news comments. People who had never met her son now felt free to decide who he was. She didn't sleep much. The knock came the next morning. It was firm, but controlled. Not rushed, not angry. Alina checked the peephole and froze. A man stood in the hallway wearing a suit that looked out of place in a building with peeling paint and cracked tiles. He didn't look nervous. He didn't look lost. She opened the door just enough to keep it between them. "Yes?" she asked carefully. "Ms. Montel," he said. "My name is Silvano Bellini. I witnessed what happened to your son." Her grip tightened on the door. She knew the name. Everyone in Youngstown did, even if they pretended not to. "I brought Ren home that night," he continued. "I'd like to talk, if you allow it." Alina studied his face, searching for threat, for arrogance, for the kind of hunger she had learned to recognize in men who wanted something. She didn't see it. What she saw was patience. She stepped back and let him in. The apartment revealed itself in full daylight. Second-hand furniture, worn carpet. A life built carefully on very little. Silvano took it in without comment. No judgment. No pity. Ren appeared in the doorway, stopping when he recognized him. Surprise flashed across his face. Silvano immediately raised his hands and signed hello. Ren's posture eased just a little. They sat at the table. Silvano placed a folder between them. "I don't want anything from you," he said calmly. "I'm here because what happened was wrong." Alina opened the folder and felt her head spin. Photos, reports, names. Bryce Kepler's name appeared again and again, followed by incidents that had vanished without consequences. "Why are you doing this?" she asked. Her voice was steady, but her eyes burned. "Nothing is free, especially not help." Silvano leaned back slightly, giving her space. "When I was a teenager," he said quietly, "my sister was bullied for being different. I was too weak to stop it then." He paused. She believed what they told her. She died believing it. The room went very still. Ren watched Silvano's hands as he signed the story, his eyes never leaving them. When Silvano finished, Ren signed a question with careful movements. "Why do people hurt others for fun?" Silvano answered honestly. "Because they confuse power with worth." Quote. Alina felt something inside her shift. Not trust, not yet, but understanding. Silvano explained his plan slowly. He would not touch Bryce, he would not threaten him. He would do something worse. He would remove protection. The video, the security footage, the text messages, all of it documented, all of it ready. The school board, the press, the community. He would force the truth into the light where money could not bury it quietly. "I will level the field," Silvano said. "What you choose to do after that is up to you." Alina looked at her son. Ren sat straight now, listening, thinking. He signed something to her. "I don't want them to hurt other kids." Her chest tightened. She looked back at Silvano. "Okay," she said, "but if this hurts my children, I walk away." Silvano nodded. "That's fair." 2 days later, Bryce Kepler sat in a conference room that suddenly felt too small. His father's confidence was cracking. The principal avoided eye contact. When Silvano entered with Alina and Ren, the balance of the room shifted. Silvano did not raise his voice. He did not threaten. He presented facts. The security footage played. The room watched Ren being shoved, cornered, humiliated. No sound, no excuses. Bryce's face drained of color. Silvano spoke once the screen went dark. "This ends today." The terms were clear: public apology, community service at the Deaf Education Center, mandatory training. A scholarship fund in Ren's name. Real consequences that could not be erased quietly. Silence followed. Then, Bryce nodded. It was small. It was shaky. But it was real. And Ren watched closely, learning that sometimes justice did not arrive loud or violent, but steady and unavoidable. The story broke on Sunday morning, and by noon, Youngstown felt like it was holding its breath. The video that once made people laugh now sat beside headlines filled with words like cruelty, accountability, and failure. Screens showed the same image again and again, a small boy against a wall, but now the comments were different. People were angry. Some were ashamed. Some were scared that their own silence had been noticed. Alina woke up to her phone buzzing non-stop. Messages from parents she had never met. Teachers asking how Ren was doing. Strangers offering support. She read them slowly, one by one, sitting at the kitchen table while Ren ate cereal across from her, watching her face for signs of danger. "It's okay," she told him, smiling gently. "People are listening now." Ren nodded, though his hand stayed still. He was learning that attention could be just as frightening as cruelty. That afternoon, Bryce Kepler walked into the County Deaf Education Center for the first time. He wasn't wearing his Letterman jacket, just a plain sweatshirt and jeans. The building smelled like cleaning solution and crayons. Children moved through the halls, some signing, some speaking, some doing both. None of them cared who he was. A woman named Joan met him at the front desk. Her hair was gray, her eyes sharp. She had spent decades fighting systems that forgot children like Ren. "You're late," she said, checking her clipboard. Bryce swallowed and nodded. "I'm here." She handed him a schedule and pointed down the hall. "Start with the younger kids. They are honest." Honest turned out to be a polite word. A 5-year-old girl corrected his signing within seconds, tapping his fingers and shaking her head with a serious expression. A boy asked him bluntly why he talked funny with his hands. Bryce had no answers that didn't sound hollow. By the end of the day, his arms ached and his pride hurt more. Ren returned to school on Monday. Alina walked him to the door, her hand resting on his shoulder. The building looked the same, but it felt different. Teachers smiled more carefully. Students whispered less. His classroom had been rearranged so he could see everyone's face. The interpreter stood closer. A few kids tried signing hello, their movements awkward but sincere. Ren took his seat and opened his notebook. He was scared, but he stayed. The school announced new policies by the end of the week: mandatory training, clear reporting systems, consequences that could not be quietly erased. Parents who had once looked away now demanded action. The board meetings were full for the first time in years. At Restaurant Bellanote, something unexpected happened. The owner called Silvano and asked a question that surprised even him. What would it take to make this place accessible? Within 2 weeks, deaf servers were hired, menus were redesigned, training sessions filled the back room. Customers watched hands move across tables with curiosity, then acceptance. Other businesses followed. It became something people talked about with pride. Lena noticed the changes in smaller ways too. Ren slept through the night. The scholarship fund grew faster than she could understand. Donations came from across the state. Notes arrived with stories from parents who had fought similar battles and lost. Silvano stayed in the background. He never spoke to the press. He never took credit. But he checked in quietly. A message asking how Ren was doing. A reminder that she could call if things shifted. They began meeting for coffee on Thursdays. Nothing formal. Just two people talking while life moved around them. Ren sometimes joined, teaching Silvano new signs, correcting him with a seriousness that made Alina smile despite herself. One afternoon, Ren asked a question that made both adults pause. "Do bad people change?" He signed. Silvano thought carefully before answering. "Some do." He signed back. "When they are forced to see the harm they caused." Bryce kept showing up. Even after his required hours were completed, he returned to the center. He learned more signs. He listened more than he spoke. He began to understand that power without empathy was empty. One day, Ren saw him there. They stood across the room, both unsure. Ren lifted his hands and signed slowly. "You hurt me." Bryce nodded, his hands moving clumsily, but honestly. "I know. I am sorry. I am trying to be better." Ren studied him for a long moment, then signed again. "Don't stop trying." It wasn't forgiveness. Not fully. But it was something. Winter arrived quietly. Snow softened the city's rough edges. The scholarship fund crossed a number Alina never thought she would see. Enough for college. Enough for hope. Silvano watched all of it from a distance, sitting at his usual table, seeing a different city take shape outside his window. Not perfect, not healed, but changing. He knew he couldn't save everyone. But this time, he had saved one. And that mattered more than any empire he had ever built. Christmas lights came on early that year, glowing against the gray buildings like the city was trying to remind itself how to hope. Snow fell in slow, quiet waves, softening cracked sidewalks and broken signs. Youngstown looked almost gentle under it all. Ren stood at the apartment window, watching flakes drift down. He no longer flinched when his phone vibrated. The world had not suddenly become kind, but it had learned his name. A package waited outside the door that morning. It was wrapped carefully, his name written neatly across the top. Inside was a skateboard unlike any he had ever seen. Bright colors covered the deck. Hands painted in motion formed words he recognized immediately. Brave, strong, worthy. Ren pressed his palm against the artwork and smiled. That evening, Alina opened her own envelope. Her hands shook as she read the letter inside. Acceptance, full support. A future she had once buried under exhaustion was suddenly real. She sat down and cried quietly. Not from pain this time, but relief. Somewhere across the city, Bryce Kepler filled out college forms with a different understanding of who he was becoming. He no longer chased applause. He chased meaning. The path was harder, slower, and real. At school, Ren walked the halls without shrinking. Students signed hello. Teachers faced him when they spoke. His difference was no longer a reason to isolate him, but a reason others learned something new. On New Year's Eve, Restaurant Bellanote buzzed with life. Deaf and hearing guests filled the room, hands and voices moving together. Music played while an interpreter translated rhythm into motion. It felt like a celebration built for everyone. Silvano arrived late, as he often did. He found Alina and Ren waiting at the table near the window. Ren waved eagerly. Silvano signed back without hesitation, fluent now. They counted down to midnight together, watching numbers fall on screens instead of listening to shouted voices. When the new year arrived, Silvano reached for Alina's hand. She let him. No promises were spoken. None were needed. Outside, snow fell harder, covering old scars with fresh white. The city still carried its problems. It always would. But one boy had been seen. One mother had been heard. And one man had kept a promise he made long ago. Ren looked up at Silvano and signed a simple sentence. "Thank you for seeing me." Silvano smiled and answered with steady hands. "Always."